o'clock. I'm going to call the meeting to order. This is the regular meeting of the Kaneland Board of Education. We would like to inform all board meeting attendees that this meeting is being live streamed and archived for access at any time by our community members on the internet within 24 to 48 hours of the meeting's conclusion. This meeting is open to the public in accordance with guidance issued by the Office of the Governor of Illinois, the Illinois Department of Public Health, and the Illinois State Board of Education. Individuals are required to wear a face covering at all times while in the building, including during the meeting. And we will rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And a roll call, please.
Mrs. Witt.
Here.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Here.
Mrs. Junk.
Here.
Dr. Lawler.
Here.
Mr. Mankivsky.
Here.
Mrs. Simmons.
Here.
And Mr. Carey is absent.
Okay, with 6 members present, we do have a quorum. Okay, do any board members wish to move anything from the consent agenda to new business? Hearing none, we'll move forward with the approval of the agenda. Tonight's approval is as presented.
So moved.
Second.
And a roll call, please.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Aye.
Mrs. Junk.
Aye.
Dr. Lawler.
Aye.
Mr. Mankivsky.
Aye.
Mrs. Simmons.
Aye.
Mrs. Witt.
Aye. Motion carries 6-0. We'll move on to the board and superintendent salutes. Dr. Layton?
Yes, I'm proud and happy to share that we are just a couple days away from having students in the building. We had our staff back today, did a lot of wonderful professional development to kick off the school year today and tomorrow, and then Wednesday we do welcome our students. It's when students and families arrive for back to school or curriculum nights, everything is generally in order, put back, ready to go. But over the course of the summer, there's a lot of work that goes on by a lot of staff members to get us in that position. So it's just a general blanket salute to all of our staff that helped get us ready, and to our students who we look forward to welcoming back in just a few days. And the families. Families have had a lot to prepare for in the last 18 months to get ready for students to be in person every day, and we do look forward to that. So with that, I would like to salute our staff, our families, and our students. And that was all I had tonight.
Thank you, everyone. Dr. Fuchs, do you have anything?
I don't have one tonight,
Okay.
thank you.
All right, this is the first opportunity for public comment at the board meeting. The board values public input to inform our decision-making and to provide information and insight into what is happening throughout the district. Board meetings are held to conduct the business of the Board of Education and are required by law to take place in public. However, they are not public forums. We use the public comment section as an opportunity to listen to our stakeholders. For that reason, the board does not enter into a debate or respond to questions spontaneously or without proper investigation and deliberation. In most cases, concerns or questions requiring follow-up will be referred to the superintendent. If you choose to speak publicly, we ask that you do so at the microphone. State your name and the village of residence or your association with us for the record, and limit your comments to 3 minutes or less so that all who wish to speak may have that opportunity. Public comment is a maximum of 30 minutes with a 20-minute total length of time for any one subject. However, tonight we have 7 speakers. We're going to go ahead and let everybody speak for the 3 minutes. You are encouraged to seek a private appointment to discuss matters concerning individual students or staff members. While public education can be an emotional issue, and understandably so, the board strives to maintain a certain level of decorum at the meeting. Those who speak are expected to maintain a tone of courtesy and civility, and I will add, as are those who are listening. And we will start with the first person on the list, which I believe is one that was sent in to Dr. Layden, and it's from Brooke Lutgert.
Thank you. Again, this is Brooke Lutgert, and the public comment is as follows. Respected board members and fellow parents, I have asked for this comment to be read because I cannot bring my children safely into this forum, nor can I leave them home alone. Like you, my greatest worry is the continued safety and well-being. Thank you, council
Can you
members.
start the timer, please? Sorry, Dr. Layden. Thank you. Start. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you, council members who have voted in favor of continued mask and mitigation policies in our community's fight against the COVID-19 and its variants. Thank you to the parents who have fought so tirelessly to protect our children, your children, and our families. Thank you also to those who have decided to protest and organize on both sides of this issue. I understand your anger. We would all prefer to return to pre-COVID world. We are all angry and eager to move forward. However, in order to bring this pandemic behind us, we cannot afford to get distracted. This is not a political issue. This is not a debate about personal freedom. We want our kids in school. We want our kids safe in school. We continue to face a public health emergency. I have children under 12 and not yet eligible for vaccination. We all have teachers that are caregivers for elderly parents and their own young children. We have medically fragile members in this community. We all want to move forward, but in order to do so, we must invest in preventing further outbreaks. I choose not to ignore science or statistics. I choose to see the very real risk of COVID-19 infection to my children and yours. I choose to see that risk be mitigated, or at least lessened. My beliefs and yours are irrelevant. We have facts. Masking reduces spread. Distancing reduces spread. Cleaning surfaces and hands reduces spread. We must acknowledge that the only way through this is to stay masked and be vigilant. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Dr. Layden. Okay, the second person on the list is Brianna Jones.
Good evening. I'd like to clarify that, I have to get my name, sorry. I'm Brianna Jones. I'm from Sugar Grove.
Thank you.
I'd like to clarify that I come to this meeting with no political or religious ideology, just the wish for our children, teachers, and staff to be safe and healthy. As of July 29th, 2021, there have been 540 deaths of children aged 17 years and younger in the U.S. Since early 2020, there have been 4.2 million U.S. children who have tested positive for COVID. As of last week, there have been 72,000 children's cases that have been added to this. As of August 2nd of this year, there have been 972 teachers and staff that have passed from COVID. Just this last week, there have been 23 admitted to the Arkansas Children's Hospital, 10 of which are in the ICU. The St. Louis Children's Hospital, 20 children have been hospitalized, 13 of which are in the ICU. Texas Children's Hospital, 30 have been hospitalized. Louisiana Children's Hospital, 13 have been hospitalized, 4 of which are in the ICU, which include a 3-month-old, one 23-month-old, one 8-year-old, and one 17-year-old. This is not the time for politics, for fighting, for shaming, or for threatening lawsuits about masks. Masks save lives. Masks protect our children. Kaneland schools have had no transmittable cases because the district and the parents took the precautions in masking. The only way our children will get sick is if these precautions are not taken. This is a horrifying virus. Children are lying in ICU beds, air hungry, struggling for every breath, not understanding why they can't breathe. Children are quoted asking their doctors if they're going to die. Hospitals have estimated that 1.3 million children worldwide have lost a custodial parent or guardian, causing these children to become orphaned. The country with the highest number of children who have lost a primary caregiver includes the United States, with over 104,000 children being orphaned. I'm a single parent. I'm the only thing my child has. If I die, where does she go? I, for one, will not risk finding the answer to that question. I, for one, will not be the one to have that question asked by any of your children. Where will I go? We must continue to take the COVID precautions that we took in the beginning. Remote learning should continue to be offered. Extra cleaning should be procedure. Distancing and strict mask rules should be protocol. COVID has not disappeared overnight. And while we are all tired of this pandemic, we still all have work to do.
Thank you. The next person on the list is Sandy Lopez.
See if I can turn this down. Hopefully you can hear me. Hi everyone, my name is Sandy Lopez and I reside in Sugar Grove. I have 2 students at Kaneland High School and I'm here today because I wanted to make sure that the voices of those in favor of masking and protecting our children during this pandemic can be heard. COVID has personally affected my family. My daughter, my aunt, and 2 of my nephews had COVID. One nephew is a CNA and one nephew is a firefighter. The firefighter ended up on a respirator with double pulmonary embolisms, but was lucky enough to survive. I can't say the same about my aunt. We lost her to COVID at the end of last year. The other reason why I'm here today is to thank the board for their time and dedication to our school district and to the safety of our children. I also want to note that while we are here at the school board meetings discussing educational plans for our children and their well-being, we need to treat each other with kindness and respect. Our children are watching, and shouting racist slurs and insults is not the example we should be setting for our children, our schools, or our community. There is so much uncertainty and divisiveness regarding this virus and the use of masks, but what is certain is that COVID is real. It is infecting and killing people. It is also certain that masks do not interfere with the oxygen carrying capacity. They do not elevate CO2 levels. They do not inhibit lung development, and their use has a lower mortality rate than COVID itself. We should be viewing masks as a life-saving medical supply. They are. We should not be divided on protecting our children against a deadly virus. In a time of so much uncertainty, I applaud the board for reversing their decision and choosing to err on the side of caution before the mandate came from the governor. I am grateful for their decision to protect all children and not just some. Last year, I heard so many complaints about e-learning and that the virtual setting was a hardship for children's mental well-being. If we know students want to be in school, why not be united on the mask policy and other tools that help keep our kids in school year-round in face-to-face setting and not force us to a hybrid or an all-virtual school year? We have 5 tools that we can use to keep our kids safe and in schools: vaccines, masks, ventilation, testing, and distancing. Not everyone is open to using what we know can help prevent infection and the spread of the virus, but why not use as many as we can to keep our kids safe and in school? This year, I hear that parents are more worried about sending their kids to school than last year. Last year, we were able to use many of the tools I listed, but when we eliminate what we know works to prevent the spread of COVID, we increase the chance for your kids and mine to be exposed and infected. I urge the Kaneland community to put aside our differences and unite under the common goal. The goal is the safety and well-being of all our children. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Chris Higgins.
Hello, I'm Chris Higgins. I live in Maple Park. I have 2 kids in the school district. So I hope everyone here agrees that the school district's #1 responsibility to the kids is to provide a safe school environment. In fact, there are dozens of laws and regulations that the district requires school to provide a safe learning environment, from active shooter drills, anti-bullying regulations, even the need to go to the dentist before enrolling in school. Courts have found over and over that the district and staff have an obligation to protect our children and provide a safe and healthy learning environment. Protecting our kids from COVID and being bullied by anti-masker and anti-vaxxer parents is part of that mission. In the U.S., state and local government agencies make both laws and policies all the time about public safety. While you can drive a car, you have to have your kids wear a seatbelt. You have the right to smoke, but you can't do it in public buildings anymore because it affects the health of others. COVID is no different. By walking into a school building not wearing a mask, you are affecting the health and safety of others. The school has an obligation to protect our kids. Some parents complain that the kids come home and they have sweated through their mask. There is no rule that says students couldn't use multiple masks in the course of a day, and if parents have financial responsibilities that make that difficult, I'm sure we can find a solution to that. Some parents say that kids don't want to wear a mask, and I get it. I don't enjoy wearing a mask. I don't like to wear a seatbelt either. But as an adult and a parent, I lead by example, and my kids have learned that it is not optional. And just like a seatbelt, they don't even ask anymore. That is a parenting problem. Parents should teach their kids to wear masks just like they did to wear a seatbelt. By having all kids in masks, you also eliminate peer pressure and bullying of kids that want to wear them by kids that aren't wearing them. Kids not being in school has been found to cause mental stress and anxiety, not being in school wearing a mask. I want to thank all the members that stood up for the safety of our kids. I would expect that the administration should do everything possible to keep our kids safe in a healthy learning environment, not just the legal minimum required. Keep masks mandatory for all, no mask exceptions. Add COVID vaccine to the mandatory vaccines to attend school as soon as it gets full FDA approval and kids are available. Also offer alternative lunch options to promote social distancing with minimum of 6 feet while not wearing masks. As many schools offered this year, lunch in the library and other areas to promote social distancing. Keep our kids in school. Keep masks mandatory.
Thank you. The next person is Shannon Cody.
Hi, I'm Shannon Cody. I live in Sugar Grove and I have 2 children in the district. First and foremost, I want to thank all of you for your time and your service. I recognize that this is a voluntary position and we appreciate your efforts in our community. I want to thank you all and know that the data is changing on a day-to-day basis and it's hard to keep abreast of everything that's going on. I feel that it is our obligation as parents, as educators, and administrators to do all that we can to keep our children safe. This includes masking and making sure that proper mask usage is followed, proper masks are worn, no mesh masks, no gaiters, etc. I think we need to also continue to do cleaning efforts and social distancing where at all possible. We have the need to keep our children as safe as possible. Like others have stated before me, we do lots of things that we don't always enjoy, wearing seatbelts, not smoking. I don't send my kids with peanut snacks because I know there are others that have allergies. And we do all of this as a larger community to keep each other safe, not for personal preference, not for political beliefs or religious beliefs, but as a general community member. Anything that we fail to do, that we are able to do, that results in any child becoming sick, losing learning time, or God forbid being in the hospital is on us. And I greatly feel that we have an obligation not to do that and to do everything in our power to protect our kids. Thanks.
Thank you. The next person is Luke Sharp.
Thank you. My name is Luke Sharp. I have 3 kids in the district, 1 at Harder and 2 at Shields. I'll just start off, get some things on the record tonight. Freedom is not free. The Declaration of Independence, the Constitution for the United States of America, the Federalist Papers, those documents and papers are a great source of knowledge that sets the foundation on how our great country was founded. Our founders made it very clear, we the people hold all the power. The government gets its power from the people, not the other way around. We all have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, God-given rights. And notice none of these documents that you guys are referencing state that the Constitution is suspended during a pandemic. COVID tests, masks, and vaccines all have what is called emergency use authorization. EUAs must have the option to refuse and the right to informed consent per federal law, Title 21 U.S.C. 360 BBB-3 of the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act. To my knowledge, neither the parents nor the students have been given any of these informed consents after the mandates have been implemented. The other question I had was by what legal authority or law is the governor citing that is requiring my children to submit to medical interventions that I as a parent and my children do not consent to? Only a licensed medical doctor can prescribe a medical treatment such as a mask, COVID testing, or vaccine. No CDC guidelines, OSHA regulations, or health officer can suspend me and my children's constitutionally protected and guaranteed right to life and the right to determine what is done to my body and our bodies. Mandates, guidance, and recommendations, they're not laws. Learn the difference between legal and lawful. Understand common law. The CDC does not promulgate laws and is a private corporation. Think about that. Concerning voluntary consent to medical experiments, the Nuremberg Code, permissible medical experiments, document 6.1 and 3. I suggest you read it. Federal law provides that it is a crime to violate the constitutional rights of a citizen under color of law. Attempting to coerce or deceive a citizen to surrender his constitutional rights is a federal crime. Federal courts have found that your ignorance of the law is no excuse. I won't get into the science. Whether you're pro-vax, pro-mask, makes no difference to me. God gave everyone free will. However, what will it take to put an end to this clear abuse of power? What happens when the FDA approves the vax for all ages? What will you do at this school district? Are you going to require all kids to get the vax? What then? Where's the outrage at that point? What happened to my body and my choice? Absolute despotism is upon us. There's a few of God's tenets that I follow every day in my life. Love thy neighbor, give voice to the innocent, which is why I'm here, and trust in the Lord and have no fear. It's time we stand up, turn off the TV, and quit living in fear. Quit imposing these illegal mandates and give people the option. Thank you.
Thank you. The last person that signed up is another one that I think Dr. Layden is going to read, which is Tiffany Matthew Sizemore.
Yes, this is a public comment on behalf of Tiffany and Matthew Sizemore. Dear District 302 administration, staff members, and board, we are new to the district this year and have one child entering 6th grade at Harder Middle School who is at high risk, a cancer survivor, who is not yet old enough to be vaccinated and is an active ongoing oncology patient at Ann and Robert Lurie Children's Hospital of Chicago, as well as other child entering 3rd grade at John Stewart who has a history of asthma and can be severely triggered by illness and is not eligible for the vaccine yet. Unfortunately, my husband and I are not able to attend tonight's meeting for a number of reasons, but mainly due to the health and wellness of our children. I attended the last meeting, and due to so many there either not wearing their masks or wearing them incorrectly, noses or mouths out, I'm not willing to put my children at risk by attending. I hope this public comment statement will be reviewed by the board and taken with full consideration. We were extremely disappointed by the board's vote a couple of weeks ago to keep masks optional for our children who are not able to be inoculated yet. But we were and are very thankful to the governor for the mandate to mask those who are in P12 schools, as the science and data show this is the best way to keep our children who are not able to be inoculated safely. With the updated mandate, the CDC, IDPH, AAP, and the Kane County Health Department still highly recommended layers of mitigation to keep everyone safe, but we have yet to see any updates from District 302 on how these recommendations will be addressed. The amount of misinformation I have seen in the community is disturbing and would hope that this is something the board is also working to address. In addition, below are a few items I hope will be discussed and resolved at this meeting or before the first day of school. Even with masks being worn universally, it is recommended that parties listed above that keeping at least 6 feet of distance should be maintained and at least 3 feet if the latter is not an option. When I visited elementary school last week, it did appear that this was an action based on the setup of the classrooms. How will this be maintained? How will distancing be addressed during the lunch periods as the children will be unmasked while eating? How will the school mandate that every child is in fact wearing a mask and wearing it properly? With recent rumors of a bubble brigade or protests on the first day of school, has the school administration or board been in contact with local authorities to ensure kids are safely able to enter the school? Without these mitigations in place, the probability of another school shutdown seems imminent. Is there a plan in place for a remote learning transition?
It's time.
Thank you.
So that's all the people that are signed up. We do have a few more minutes left before the 30-minute timeline. Is there anyone that didn't speak that would like to speak? Yes.
Thank you, President Witt. Chris Bateman, Elburn. I have 2 children now entering Kaneland, Blackberry Creek. One will be a first grader, one's in 4th grade. I hear everything that was said tonight, and I appreciate everyone's comments. I don't disagree at all that masks need to be worn, that we as parents need to set examples for that. Clearly, I'm in my mask, and I am all the time. And I had a conversation with my daughter as we walked out of school tonight after dropping off her supplies about why she needed to wear her mask even though she didn't want to. The one question that I do have, though, for the board, as well as the family members here tonight, when we look at our students and what they've gone through in the last 18 months, and particularly over the course of the summer, have you required your students or your children to be in a mask all the time, every time they did anything with anybody else? And if you have, that's fantastic. But what I can also tell you is that my children went to camp this summer with over 1,000 other students and with roughly 300 camp counselors. They had to wear masks while they were indoors. They spent most of their time outside, and we'll call it mediocre at mask wearing at best. In the 10 weeks they've been in camp, not one case of COVID. Not one in camp the whole time. I can also tell you that while yes, there are children who are getting sick and who are doing things like that, in the last 6 weeks at the hospital that I work at, our pediatric unit has been closed for over 13 days because we don't have any patients to be on it. Our pediatric intensive care unit has been closed for 7 days because there are not enough patients to support it. Children are getting sick. I will not deny that at all. I'm not going to deny the science. I'm not going to not follow the rules because they're there and that's what they're made for. And now the mask is a rule for the first time. What I'm asking though is every time we hear these things, we look at the science, we listen to the rules, but let's remember to apply just a little bit of common sense to what's happening. Just a little bit. To look at what the kids are doing, what they're going through, and how many of them are getting sick because of that. Some are, and it's terrible, and I would never wish that upon anybody. But to the points that were made tonight, I don't want anyone to not wear a mask. I just want to be given a choice, right? We should be given choices when it's allowed once again to make the decisions that are right for our family, our body. Thank you.
Thank you. We have time for about one more comment. Is there anybody else who would like to speak? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on then. Tonight's consent agenda contains the following action items: the approval of the treasurer's report from July 2021, the approval of minutes of the July 26, 2021 regular meeting and the July 29, 2021 special meeting, the approval of resignations, terminations, and employment of staff, the approval of the destruction of audio recordings from closed session meetings from February of 2019, the approval of a motion not to release closed session minutes from January through June 2021, the approval of policies from press on second reading, and the following informational items: new teacher hire report, the summer school and jumpstart update, the Freedom of Information Act, and FOIA report. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
A roll call when you're ready, please.
Mrs. Junk.
Aye.
Dr. Lawler.
Aye.
Mr. Mankivsky.
Aye.
Mrs. Simmons.
Aye.
Mrs. Witt.
Aye.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0. We'll move on now to new business, and the first item on the new business is the back-to-school plan update. Dr. Layden?
Yes, thank you, President Witt. As you can see on the screen, we do have an update. The template itself is the same template that we've used with our 3 other updates, but please know that tonight's update is for new guidance that has been issued. So I'd like you to, those that are looking for previous guidance on the previous board meetings in May 24th and July 26th, they can find the other plans with the up-to-date information at that time. And please also know that due to the changing guidance, if we just go back to July 9th, we got the first piece on July 9th, it changed on the 27th, and then we've had guidance that has come now August 4th, 6th, and 9th. So just that guidance regularly changes, and one of our goals to make sure that we communicate properly We have implemented a frequently asked question page on our website, again, as we did last year, because as the guidance changes, questions come in regularly, and returning individual emails and phone calls at times is not the most timely way in which to do that, to get back to folks. So we do have that FAQ that will be updated on the district homepage. If you go under back to school, and then under back to school, it's district communication. So what we'll do is we'll have a running list by topics and by dates. And if you want to go back there at a minimum weekly, we will make sure it's updated on a weekly basis with updated information. Then other updates that we have, we will, as the guidance changes, we'll be able to get other district updates out. One piece that we know we'll get to in a minute is the exclusion chart. The decision tree, as it's called, for quarantining. That piece is still in review, and we've told them regularly that school starts on Wednesday. We will have students coming on Wednesday. We need that immediately, but we'll provide some more information on that a little bit later. And then also, if you have specific building questions, please reach out to the administrators and principals. And then also, as we get those questions, we'll use those in the FAQ also, because many of the questions that we're receiving are better answered by some of our administrators in the buildings based on what the questions are. A couple items to note. Again, as you all have seen and heard now, the governor's executive order on August 7th or August 2nd has been enacted. And as we have reviewed that, we again have shared with our community those updates. And as our students arrive and staff arrive today, and our students arrive on Wednesday, it is a mandate. We do have, we checked with our legal counsel, insurance companies, and it is something that we are expected to do and expected to follow as a mandate, and we will do that. One of the other items to note is that as masking is required, we will also, two important questions that we're receiving a lot of questions. What happens if a student doesn't wear a mask? What happens when a student shows up to school not wearing a mask, or they're unable to wear a mask? We were very fortunate last year with also having a masking mandate in place last year. Our students did a wonderful job. If there were times when students didn't wear a mask, we addressed it individually, addressed it with the family. And those instances where students couldn't wear a mask, we communicated with them, gave them extra masks, and we worked those items out. If indeed there are any intentional non-mask wearers that are capable of wearing a mask, if they don't have a medical note, or if they don't have an IEP or a medical reason not to wear it, we've also checked with our legal, and there is the right and recourse based on Senate Bill 100 for student discipline following the progressive guidelines, just as we would for any violation that is a district rule or policy. We would hope for sure that our families will support that, and that our students will have masks, because the last thing that we want are students to not take advantage of being back to in-person instruction.
Todd, what does that mean? I mean, you know, if they're in kindergarten and they're having issues, you might put them in timeout. So what does that mean in terms of progressive discipline for not wearing a mask?
It's a great question, and kind of an individualized question, because I think depending on if it's, we had one student that really struggled to wear it last year, and then that family, as we worked with them, we continued to try to have the student wear the mask, and the student couldn't. So then last year with the remote option, we were able to move that student to remote. We've also, in the guidance, it also shares that if students have a medical, which Dr. Adkins will share in a second, if they have a medical note that to wear a shield or some other type of PPE, that we can move students around in classrooms and try to creatively use the spacing. So to answer your question, the first thing we would do is talk with the student and make sure they have a mask. Do you have a mask that works, and are you willing to wear it? And if they're willing to wear it, we would give them a mask. We have extra masks on hand. If there's a student who willfully and wantonly does not wear a mask, then at that point, we would contact the family, talk with the families, and work through why are they not wearing a mask, how can you help us support it, what can we do? And then we would follow, based on how egregious the act is, it might be exclusion from school for a period of time. might be detentions. And we'd really hate to have to issue in-school suspensions or out-of-school suspensions, but it would follow our regular progressive discipline that we have for other disciplinary infractions.
Thank you.
Do we have guidelines for the kinds of masks that are acceptable? Because I know we did last year, right? So do we have similar ones?
Yeah, Dr. Atkins, do you mind, you're going to come up here in a second, anyhow, to answer the next question? I know that you shared a note with our staff today on the masking guidelines. Can you provide a quick update on that one?
Absolutely. So the most recent guidance as of this afternoon from Part 5, the state does list the kinds of masks that should be expected to be worn. The face mask should have 2 or more layers, cloth to stop the spread, should be worn over the nose and mouth, secured under the chin, and should fit snugly against the sides of the face without gaps. Reusable face masks should be machine washed or washed by hand and allowed to dry completely after use. Then further down, it describes what is not allowable and recommended, which are single-layer athletic face masks, i.e. gaiters or neck warmers. And then in addition to that, vented masks or masks with exhalation valves or vents. So that gives us some structure with which we can evaluate whether a mask is appropriate or not.
Dr. Atkins, one other note, one other question that we have seen that it will be in the FAQ is who is eligible and how are they eligible based on a medical certification? What is needed and how do they go about doing that if they believe they have a medical situation?
Absolutely. So we do have a form available on our website under our COVID resources page for a face mask exemption that would need to be taken to a doctor. If the licensed doctor feels that there's a medical contraindication to a child wearing a mask, maybe they are severe asthmatic, maybe they've had a lung transplant, maybe they have some sort of swallowing disorder or something, they would potentially qualify for a mask exemption. The next step after that for the doctor to prescribe essentially and certify is a face shield. After that, face shielding or face masking as tolerated with whatever social distancing requirements the doctor feels is appropriate. That does need to be certified by the doctor. It is not an option for doctors. I even spoke to a local doctor today who wanted to clarify that there are parents requesting for a medical exemption because of potentially choice versus medical contraindication, and they said we're not, just so you know, we're not doing that. So if you have a child who you feel has that medical contraindication, please see your doctor. The doctor is the only one that can say, yes, this is a medically certifiable reason to not wear a mask when there's an executive order mandating masks in public schools. So that form would then come to me for review. We would approve it if all those pieces are appropriately there, and then we would notify all the relevant school, busing, everybody else about that. If we need to make accommodations within the school to make sure that there's that extra distance between a child and their peers or whatever, we would do that as well because, again, it's being certified by a medical doctor.
Thank you, Dr. Atkins.
Yes, thank you.
Other notes on this page that based on the guidance and based on practice, once we get our students back, some of these practices may shift as the year progresses, as we're taking our metrics in each of our buildings. So I would ask if Dr. Mumm and Mr. Raleigh can provide updates on cafeteria and locker usage, please.
Yep, for elementary students, they will need to wear their mask as they transition to the lunchroom area. This year, the lunchroom and lunch practices will resume back in the multipurpose room. And for some schools, will be located on the stage that's adjacent to that room with the stage door open, very similar to here at Harder. You'll have the cafeteria space and the stage space within some of the elementaries. The exact setup does look different because our 4 buildings do look different. They also have different enrollments per grade level. So what might happen at kindergarten at one school may vary slightly to the next school depending on how many students are enrolled at that grade. They will be able to take their mask off once they are seated in their assigned spot for lunch. The assigned spots will be anywhere from 3 to 6 feet, again, depending on enrollment, structure of the site, the table orientation. All of that are factors that our administrative team have looked in. Our goal is to get them as close to 6 feet as possible. We do have an optional layer of mitigation available at all buildings. and that's the plexiglass. We know it doesn't impact the decision tree, but for safety, students can have a plexiglass barrier between them and another student during the lunch period if they choose. Those plexiglass barriers will be around the cafeteria so that they can engage and use those as they see fit. Once they're done eating, even if lunch period is not complete, we do encourage the students to put their mask back on, and then absolutely they have to have it on when they leave their spot and transition out to recess or back to the classroom. Once they're out to recess, they may go ahead and remove the mask because it's outdoor. For indoor recess, they would continue to use the mask during the indoor period of time. We will have our behavior facilitators, which we're excited to have that position, at lunch, especially that first probably week and a half, to have conversations with students about the feeling of any isolation or concerns or fear. And so they're going to be kind of rotating and popping around the cafeteria area, outside at recess, as well as the entry and exit during the day, just to keep checking on kind of that social emotional impact on any side of the option of feeling alone and not being able to have conversation. We did ask some students to come in and practice conversation with plexiglass, with 3 feet, with 6 feet, to make sure that you still could have some socialization, and the noise level was very acceptable for all when we did that. So I believe we're ready. We'll see on Wednesday what further on the spot, on site problems we have to work on.
And I would echo very similar mitigations at both middle school and high school. Depending on the grade level, the period of the day, how many students are in that depends on how far apart they can be spaced. We do have monitors that are monitoring as students enter into the cafeteria. As Dr. Mum said, they have to have their masks on as they come through, as they go through the hot lunch line. You can see the cafeteria set up here. It is not as many seats as it has been in previous years. We've broadened those out a little bit and removed some seats from the round tables and the larger tables. We do have monitors. We do have behavior facilitators specifically here and the high school that are going to be doing similar practices, walking around, encouraging students. I know that they're not to wear them or they can't wear them when they're eating, but as they're socializing, even while lunch is going on, still encouraging them to wear their masks in between bites, in between food prior to the time they get up to leave. And then as soon as they're done, while they're throwing their garbage out, they're wearing masks on the way out of the cafeteria, through the halls, leading into the last bullet point there to their lockers if they choose to visit them. And we have an increased number of students compared to where we were at with our hybrid model. So it becomes a little bit too crowded in classrooms, especially if this carries into the winter months when we think about backpacks and coats. So students will have the opportunity to use their lockers to exchange books, drop off books. The good news that helps us out with this practice is that the overwhelming amount of our materials are housed in our student Chromebooks. So gone are the days where they have a 400-page textbook for every single course that they're taking. For the most part, everything is housed on there, minus some textbooks, some novels, things like that. So there will be the availability of locker usage. A benefit that we have throughout our hallways here in the cafeteria. If we do need to contact trace, we have cameras that are available to help track that, to make sure that students, if in fact they are within the space for 15 minutes or more. So as we monitor those, our administrative teams did a phenomenal job last year in keeping on top of those metrics. We will continue to monitor those and see if we need to layer in extra mitigation.
Thank you, Mr. Raleigh and Dr. Mum. The next two topics, we're hoping to be able to have the decision tree from the IDPH done and updated. We are still waiting for that. Once we do get that, we will make sure we forward that on to families and our staff members. I know our school nurses and our principals who work so hard on the decision tree and exclusion. We need that and to be able to operate, but in the meantime, I'll let Dr. Fuchs and Dr. Atkins provide an update in 1 second. And then the other topic you see, the shield testing. Dr. Fuchs will provide an update on the shield testing, update where we are, how our numbers look, and the benefits of shield testing. So first, Dr. Atkins, if you would provide an update on the decision tree as it relates to our students. or Dr. Fuchs, to our
Thank you.
students. Thank you.
Before I go back to the decision tree, let me go back to the cafeteria. The district is taking advantage of the federal waiver, so we have sent out information that free lunch is available to all students, regardless of income. And so we are asking that the students register so that the cafeterias know how much food to make and prepare for. As of late this afternoon, we had 1,737 students registered for the free lunch. At the middle school and high school, that free lunch is a hot lunch. At the elementary levels, it's a sack or a bagged lunch that's prepared at one of the two big schools and delivered to the elementary schools. Those sack lunches at the elementary schools do include milk, as well as at the middle school and high school. So those are pretty good numbers. With regard to the decision tree, can you flip the slide, please? Thank you. The couple bullet points from last time that I want to remind everybody of. Vaccinations, as you know, are not required for students or staff to return to school. We are posting signs provided by the Kane County Health Department that students and staff who are experiencing COVID-like symptoms should not enter the buildings. And so we will be watching for those symptoms. With regard to the decision tree, Dr. Atkins and I split the tasks. I am responsible for the students alongside the nursing staff, and Dr. Atkins works with our human resources and our staff members who also may have symptoms or been exposed to COVID. And so together we bounce ideas off of one another. We have seen drafts, but we do not, as Dr. Layden mentioned, have the final copy of the decision tree. There are just a couple new things or differences that we're expecting when we get the final version. One of the differences is students can be between 3 and 6 feet apart in the classroom, whereas with staff, when Dr. Atkins does it, they must be 6 feet apart. So in a classroom, students can be 3 to 6, staff members 6 feet. Whether or not a person has been vaccinated may have a difference in the length of time that they may or may not need to quarantine. So we're waiting to make sure that that comes with the final version. And then finally, the Test to Stay program is really new. We've seen some language with it, and that leads me into the Shields testing. But before I talk about that, one of the other criteria that has been on the drafts of the decision tree is whether or not the students are all required or universal masking. And so that's going to help keep kids in school. I'm trying to think. Dr. Atkins, what other would you want to share about the decision tree until we get it?
The one thing that I would want to share is that although it is only in draft form, Dr. Fuchs and I have worked with each other and the nurses to begin pre-drafting our internal processes, both in terms of the contact tracing recording and the protocols for how we would notify and such based on the drafts we've seen, so that hopefully when we do finally get that draft any minute now, we'll make those final subtle tweaks and our internal processes will be completely updated. So we've done the lion's share of updating those internal pieces. So even if it is a last minute finalization of the decision tree, we'll be ready for school on Wednesday, provided we get it by Wednesday.
And speaking of that, what the health department has said is if for some reason we start school without it, we are to use the May 4th version, and all of our nurses and myself and Dr. Atkins have all used that version and are prepared to do so. With that being said then, the Shields, thank you, the Shields Illinois testing comes out of the University of Illinois. The information was sent to parents last week. So far, we've had 267 students register and 16 staff members. As of right now, the testing program is only available for non-vaccinated students and staff. I'm waiting to hear back from Shields, Illinois to see if it's possible that we can also test the vaccinated people that would like to. It is a voluntary, optional, opt-in program. So before we test anybody, they need to sign the consent form and the waiver, which we're doing online. Our plan is to test our students and staff once a week. At this point, we're waiting for our third-party vendor to help set up that schedule. We are hoping still to begin on Monday, the 16th. We anticipate that it will be 1 to 2 school buildings per day, and the test results should come back within 24 hours. The test results will go both to a person in the district, myself and the nurse, and then also the staff member and or parent of the student. Again, we anticipate that the final copy of the exclusion or decision tree will have lower quarantine requirements for students that are participating in the testing program. It is saliva-based, by the way, and the students will be doing that individually.
Julian, how many students do we have roughly?
Right now, 267.
No, total in the district?
Mm-hmm.
No, how many students total do
Oh,
we have?
I'm sorry. About 35 to 3,600.
Yikes.
Yeah. Once I think more information comes out with the decision tree and it's clear the benefits of the testing program, I believe we will probably have more participating once it gets up and running and people see how smooth it goes.
Yeah.
So,
We do
after
it
we
at
get all
NIU.
the kinks worked out.
It's awkward to spit in the tube, but it's fine.
Yeah. I agree.
Thank you, Dr. Fuchs. Can you, just one last note, as just a reminder that we have our students coming back on Wednesday, but also wanted to provide an update that now with the guidance, as we've talked about a number of times, then we do have our internal metrics that we have used. Please know that it's a multi-factor analysis that's going to be ongoing every single day. So as we do use the exclusionary chart, the decision tree, we do know the number of students that test positive on a daily basis, the number of students that are then quarantined, and we monitor that data throughout. In addition, for both students and staff, other data that we're going to look at is the community transmission level, as that has become a more important factor from the governor and from the State Board of Education. And of course, community vaccination rates, and then also the week, 7-day rolling average for the positivity rates. So those will be data that we check either daily or weekly based on whether it's a daily or a weekly metric, and we will continue to update the board at every board meeting on how that is going, and also through the weekly update, and more information will also follow on the FAQ as we learn more information and get more questions.
And I would say too, one question that has been asked is, will we report positive cases? And the answer is yes. We will send the email just like we did last year by positive case and then by building and staff or student. So that reporting will also remain the same.
Thank you. That was I know a number of people asked that question. That was a good practice, so thank you. And again, this is just an update. This will, even though it wasn't in as part of the board packet, because we were hoping to have the exclusion tree to put in and any other data that changed, because again, like I shared, just at 11 o'clock today, the State Board of Education updated their guidance, and we need to review that to see if there's any changes from the 11 o'clock today. So this presentation will be added to the board packet for this board meeting online when it is up and posted for a future reference, or for reference for those that may have missed this meeting. Are there any additional questions? Thank you.
So, sorry, it just came to me. This might be for Dr. Mum and Mr. Raleigh. When we're doing the lunchroom spacing, how do we know 3 feet versus, like, is there like X's on the ground, or like, how do you know it's like spaced out right?
Once they're at tables?
Yeah.
We have gone through, they're marked roughly, and where students sit, we'll have monitors that may need to adjust where they're at. Those, particular here, those have numbers on them, so students will be able to make the choice of where they're sitting, and they'll be instructed by their on-site administrative team. That then becomes their assigned seat. So it works a little bit different at the high school. There's a little bit more space at the high school.
Sure.
And Dr.
Yep.
Moon can talk about
Ours have tape indicating their seat as well, and as we clean them throughout the year, the students have assigned seating, so once they've been in them for a while, they kind of know their spot,
Sure.
but we replace them as needed.
Okay. And then the plexiglass, is there like enough? Say every kid wanted one, is there enough, or do we have to get more? Or
Great question. I would say, looking at our largest, there are some schools that have less than others because we used what we had within the buildings at the time.
Sure.
We do have some in the Professional Development Center where we work.
Okay.
That if more are requested, we can send them out.
Okay.
Probably, we'd be close that if you wanted to have it for every student, they could.
Oh, wow.
For those that are across. There are some seating options on the stage area that probably they don't need a plexiglass,
Sure.
that we haven't accounted for them, but we could always get them from our offices or possibly order more.
Good to hear.
Yep, I still have some in inventory, and then also we can get it very quickly.
Great to hear. Thank you.
Is that all from board members? Okay, thank you for that. And we will move on now to the J2 new business item, which is the presentation of Kaneland Connect strategic plan.
Yeah, this is almost 2 years in the making. Our first meeting to start to plan Kaneland Connects, the strategic plan to follow Kaneland 2020, started in the winter of 2019 going into 2020. And then as a result, with the planning for last year, it was put on hold. To a large degree, still some of the communication went out. But over the course of this year, we are excited that it will be, it has been approved already, the plan has, but that it will be fully enacted this year. You'll be able to hear more of the following terms. So I'll turn it over to Patrick and Sarah in a second, but connected and committed. You'll hear connected and committed, and there are 5 major commitments to the strategic plan. And so in the next couple minutes, Patrick and Sarah will walk through those and give an idea. And we'll also have this presentation that will be on the website. So the interactive videos that you saw, other people would be able to take advantage of those too in a real interactive way to learn more about the plan. So with that, I will turn it over to Dr. Mumm and Mr. Raleigh.
Sure. Thank you very much. We were talking today, we were looking for some kind of pyrotechnics for this, but we had a first responders meeting earlier this week, and I know Dr. Fuchs would not support that, but this is something we are super excited to present to you guys. In small doses, we start to see this come alive a little bit, and it is something that as a district, as a team, we're super passionate about because it has an impact on not only our kids, but our staff members, our administrative team, our community partnerships, and all of those stakeholders had a part in building this plan. There are districts across the state and across the country that will pay for people to come in and build plans like this, and they consult with them. Super proud to say that our plan, and we're fairly biased, we would put this up against any strategic plan across the state, and it was developed by 100% Kaneland stakeholders, which is really cool to see. As Dr. Layden said, there is an interactive component to this. There are some videos in which we're explaining these things. We're going to go through those, but if you're interested, it is found on our website. At any time, we are happy to answer questions about it. We're encouraging all of our staff, our administrators to be able to answer those questions, but it's something that really shows our district's perseverance. We were queued up and ready to go at this time last year, and for important reasons we weren't able to do that. But throughout last year and all the hardships that we faced with COVID, some of that is reflected in this. Because of some of the hardships that we faced, we started to thrive in some of our commitment teams, and we'll explain that. But really excited to hit the ground running with this. Our staff dove into it today, so excited to share it with you guys tonight. So quickly, the history behind this plan As Dr. Layden shared, we're talking about all of our stakeholders, every person involved in the Kaneland community, to be connected and committed to the success and allow this district to thrive. We saw that last year as our teachers, as our parents and students. Sometimes we're learning from home, sometimes we're learning from very unique spaces here in the school. These are all pictures from across the district last year on ways in which our students were committed to their learning. Setting up shop in living rooms. I know that we Zoomed meetings and PD sessions and interviews for different positions from basements and closets and backyard patios and all across the board. We were committed to doing what we needed to do to make sure that we had a successful plan in place. One of the really bright silver linings to the pandemic last year was truly the compassion that everyone had for each other and that connected piece. We were driven to be connected together. We knew that we were in a hard spot, but we were in a hard spot together. So that connected and committed piece is going to shine through with all of our commitments that we share throughout tonight. The numbers of the Kaneland Connects plan, it is one strategic plan. It is set to kick off here. We're really excited about that. We're going to talk tonight in detail about the 5 commitments. In other plans that you may see for different industries or different districts, you see things like mission statements and vision statements. What's really neat about the Connects, and this came from a community member, the word commitment itself expresses action. We've developed action plans for all of these commitments, and we're excited to share those out with you today. We did have 32 members of that committee. We met, I believe it was twice in person and one time remotely. I think it's probably 2 years now as we put this together. We had the voices of students, we had community members, we had NIU partners, Wabanzi partners, teachers, administrators. And it was such a cool group to get together because we as administrators and teachers had some ideas on how things would work, and these kids would stand up and say, well, I really want to share what it's like for a 16-year-old to go through the idea you're expressing. And the plans evolved and adapted based on everyone's feedback. So it was a real dynamic group that was put together. They did a phenomenal job in what that final product is. And lastly, you're going to see, and we're going to talk about proficiency levels. We practice, and we want to practice what we preach, and we're encouraging all of our teachers and all of our students to understand proficiency. We know that that is the clearest way for people to understand what the intended outcomes are, and it expresses in clarity what this team and this commitment team's expectation for proficiency in each of those commitments are. So you're going to see those tables. You're going to see rich descriptive language. And we'll talk and we'll put an example up, but as we progress through from an idea that's being researched and then throughout the years, an idea when it is in its proficiency phase, you're going to start to see the impact that it has on students. So we wanted to model what our kids are seeing on a daily basis in the classroom. We do have 5 commitments. You are seeing a picture of our graduate profile. Our graduate profile, we've shared this before, was developed, the icon itself, the image itself was developed by 2 students, one of which is a Kaneland student. This is an interactive icon. You can see the link to the drill down menu on it, but it has our 5 commitments. This is not, when you see the word graduate profile, this is not intended for our seniors. This is not intended for our juniors as they're getting ready to enter college or the workforce or the armed forces. This is really an EC, an early childhood through 12th grade plan. When you go into these drill down menus, you're going to see when I talk about one-to-one learning for a student in early childhood, it's going to written what that looks like, what it looks like at 3rd grade. So it's broken down into grade spans. So if I am a 3rd grader, if I'm someone from outside of the district that has kindergarten children, I see what our district expectations are for that entire journey until they're graduating with a Kaneland diploma. Any questions on that history part before we get into the commitments a little bit? Okay, the first one, we've had extensive talks about this through the last year, is social emotional learning. If you pull this up on the website, anytime you see these purple links, there is a video that is associated with that. But when we look at our social emotional learning, this is an example of what we model as proficiency tables. So our students see this with their learning on a daily basis. What's important to note here, Social emotional learning is in the research and theory phase, so we're on that far right-hand side, and those are some of the things that we're going to be doing this year in encouraging our staff and working with our staff to identify social emotional needs, their own needs, techniques for self-care and self-help. We are incredibly grateful to have our 4 behavior facilitators, and they're going to be working heavily with these teams. But if you progress all the way through and look at that left-hand column of what it looks like to be proficient, when we are proficient, you start to see that progression from the right to the left of a lot of staff-based language to student-based language. Students can self-reflect on their personal learning needs. Students can self-reflect on the supports they need for their social emotional well-being. So you will see that modeled throughout the 5 commitments on these tables. Some key terms, we've done some exercises as an administrative team as we go through. Some key terms that stand out for this SEL, the social emotional learning commitment, are words like self-care, self-need, identifying emotional needs. You'll see those words come up, so when you're seeing those things, you know that you're connected to the social emotional commitment. Our goals for this year alone, so this is a multi-year action plan, and each year on the full strategic plan lays out year by year what our actions look like. That can be overwhelming. I know some people like to see the full scope of that work. Some people like to see, okay, what do I need to do for this coming year? And that is laid out here. So for the 21-22 school year, there are some staff-based needs, there are some student-based needs, some administrative-based needs, in ways that we're trying to accomplish these things. So some of those first few, when we talk about reflecting on learning needs and social emotional needs, we have developed school improvement plans and goals that are used in teacher evaluation that are centered around that. Centered around reflecting on what we need to learn, changes to environment. We have a new one that we're introducing to staff that does focus on the 5 CASEL competencies, in which we will talk about later on in the presentation. But then also looking at how do we implement systemic change with our practices. Our behavior facilitators are going to lead a lot of that work with our social workers, our psychologists. And the beauty of that is all of that is intended to help impact our students and our teachers at that tier 1 general setting. Everybody has exposure to that. So it's not just the highest of needs, it is everyone is going to be able to have access to those professionals and those strategies and those interventions, because we know that people that need that help, it's not always apparent. Some of that is, I need to know how to identify that in myself. I need to know who those people are that I can go to and advocate for. So we're in the process of identifying those interventions and building that throughout the school year. And then here are just some of the keys for social emotional. We are in the research phase. Our commitment team will be looking at a full implementation of the 24-25 school year, and that builds throughout. That doesn't mean that we're going to do the work or we're going to wait to do the work. There are key actions. We outlined the 21-22 goals for you. A lot of that involves the CASEL competencies. I know when we talked about the job description of the behavior facilitators, there's a lot of talk around, rightfully so, the transition to this Wednesday, the transition to the first couple of months of school, and students that have not been present or present on a limited basis due to the traumatic experiences of the pandemic. Where we see this going in the future, in the long-term range of those facilitators and of these social emotional needs, is through those CASEL competencies. Every student should be able to identify and have a sense of self-awareness and self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, decision-making. All of those are lifelong skills that are needed beyond that tier 3 emergency intervention. These are tier 1, and when I say tier 1, it's every student, all classrooms. They are working on developing those skills to manage each and every class, their jobs, their relationships, siblings, all of that. So those 5 competencies we're really excited to dive into and help bring to life throughout the school year. And then truly that self-care focus for both our students, our staff members, and buildings have a variety of different ways they're doing this. We've put together teams from early childhood through 12th grade and different stakeholders on ways that we can help connect staff help staff to disconnect afterwards, after work is done, and understanding the importance of that to really help them grow with their social emotional well-being. Questions on that SEL piece before we transition to one-to-one? And we are available afterwards as well for anything that may come up. The next of our 5 commitments is one-to-one learning. This is one where we had to really go through and re-chart out what the timeline looks like for one-to-one learning. Our one-to-one learning, the key words you will hear are words involving devices, technology, and truly using that technology to help learning come alive in the classroom. When you look at that proficient phase, it is being able to transform classroom practices, and we'll explain what that means or what our expectations are and what that looks like here in just a minute. But it's involving Canvas and the learning management system where we can put assignments online, where we can put videos online, where kids can communicate back and forth in a technology forum in addition to our face-to-face learning. Our goals for the year are being able to recognize and identify the levels of, that is not a gentleman's name, of SAM-R, but it is a SAMR model. And when you look at lesson planning of going through from substitution, augmentation, modification to redefinition, an example of what that looks like. Technology is endless of what we can use it for. An example of substitution would be if in my classroom, I'm typically given a pencil and paper quiz or a pencil and paper test. I substitute that with technology. I do a Google form for a quiz, and instead of actually writing it, I've substituted that with a piece of technology. I can do that online. That is one of the lower levels. What we want to get teachers and staff to engage in is really that redefinition of what their learning looks like. What can we bring to life with technology in a lesson that goes beyond the 4 walls of a classroom for that 45 minutes or so in which that lesson is slated? How do we connect outside? How do we grow a learning objective beyond what it says in a textbook to really look at that advocacy and taking that and applying it to the real world? So that's what we're looking for, and what we're encouraging our staff and training our staff to do is use that technology with a purpose. Use it to redefine what your learning outcomes and your learning expectations are in the classroom, because there is so much more available to our students outside of our physical walls. And then for staff, we're looking at blending that face-to-face learning with some online technology, whether that's materials, whether it's flipped classrooms, videos that they can watch, and then truly getting our community. You'll see common templates by grade spans for Canvas, common places, and just trying to streamline communication through Canvas. So that is really looking at our goals for the immediate future for one-to-one. Again, we had to sit down and completely rewrite this, because with what we experienced with the pandemic, our teachers did a phenomenal job of almost being thrown into the deep end and figuring that out. And it was just really amazing to see everything that they've accomplished that we had set out as 2 or 3 year goals. We're in the approaching phase because of that. Again, you see the SAMR model that is up there and what our expectations are, and then truly that Canvas communication. Our focus is to make sure that we are consistent with that it is streamlined, that it is common from grade span in order to ease that communication with our parents. Any questions on the one-to-one phase of that? All right, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Mum.
So the next one is proficiency-based progress. I definitely echo the excitement that Patrick shared. I think I could almost cry that this evening has come. For over a year, the entire district office cabinet has been crazy excited, sitting on this plan and waiting. I truly hope there's tons tuning in to hear the excitement of this and how we can connect as a community around this plan. And there'll be opportunities, if you are an active listener, to win prizes coming up in homecoming week. So make sure you're taking notes, and you'll be able to win some cool stuff. So proficiency-based progress is something that we've been doing for quite some time. Although we're in the beginning phase of implementation, we have been working with our staff on building and starting the proficiency tables to really build teacher clarity. The proficiency-based progress is all about being able to have clarity in The learning experience, what is the intention and purpose for what I'm doing right now in the classroom? And how do I know when I have acquired the knowledge that I need to acquire or have applied the knowledge that I need to apply as a student? And between that point of first hearing about it, all the way to acquiring it and mastering it and applying it, what are my next steps so that I can plan and co-construct with my teacher feedback as well as a customized path for my learning? The intent, as you can see in the proficiency, is that students can self-reflect continually. Where am I in my point in learning? What are the expectations for my learning? And how do I get there based on my learner profile and style? And so we've been doing some kind of foundational work, building the learner profile, beginning to build the proficiency tables, building that consensus clarity among teachers of when we talk about this reported standard, what does it look like in practice for students? What is the language you should hear? What should you observe in the actions of students? And how can we make sure to make that proficiency expectation clear to students so we can be a partner in the learning journey rather than a one-way street? You'll see words such as reflection, both teacher reflection and student reflection on that learning clarity and expectation. Pathways, being able to allow students to co-construct and select the pathways that make sense for them as a learner. Every student learns differently in a different method, process, environment, and this commitment really focuses on getting to know that, understanding it, and allowing those opportunities for the paths to occur for students. You'll see a lot of feedback in the conversation and the goals and the co-construction of feedback. Hopefully all the staff that are watching will absolutely know what I'm talking about, because today we did the Feedback Academy and we said we want to get rid of the words give and receive feedback, because feedback should be constructed with the learner and the learning partner and not just a one-way street of giving or getting. And so we're trying to revamp our knowledge on how do we co-construct feedback to make sure we understand the next step in the learning process. As you'll see, some of the goals for this year is really to reach among our staff that content consensus, because you must have teacher clarity in what we're teaching before we can deliver that clear expectation to students. We do have some of the proficiency tables already drafted, ready, some even vetted throughout the school year last year, but we need time to continue because that was put on a pause throughout the last 18 months or so. So it's a matter of picking up that work, redeveloping those proficiency tables, making sure our I can statements are very clear in the classroom, as well as embedded into our learning experiences for students. Students should be able to walk into any class any day and say, yep, I know what I'm learning today and I know why, and I know what my expectation level is, and I know where I'm at right now. And if I'm there, great, what's my next step? And if I'm not there, what are the steps to get me to that point? You'll see, as I mentioned, the beginning phase. A lot of the research behind this part of the commitment is from John Hattie's work of the impact on learning if you have teacher clarity and consensus around that clarity, and even the use of common language when we talk to students about expectations. We do have, well, we haven't shared our SIP goals yet, so a little preview for our SIP presentation coming up this fall. We do have a school improvement goal around proficiency-based progress and having the students self-reflect on exit forms. What was it that we learned today? Did I know that ahead of time? Do I know where I'm at and where I'm headed towards that expectation of proficiency? Questions about the proficiency-based progress commitment?
So are the staff members, are you evaluating as you go along, like how well it's going and giving extra help to those who don't, so that we can, because a lot of times the complaints that we hear from the community and from parents is that there's no consistency. And I see all the plans for the consistency in here, and that's great. I just want to make sure that, by the time that everybody's up to speed at this, as close to the same time as possible.
Yep, that is absolutely the goal of proficiency-based progress, and leads a little bit to the next commitment as well with how do we intervene. But when it comes to proficiency-based progress, that was definitely one of the main reasons we knew we needed that strand and commitment to be so strong, to make sure we had consistency, clarity, and a vision of what that learning expectation is, and it came from consensus from teachers. We've debated long and hard over many years in the Ed Service Department. You could have or take or purchase proficiency expectations for learning from an outside vendor, but then you don't really have teacher clarity of what that means. And kudos to our staff, because they have put in time, they've put in tears, we've had some mediated conversations because there was heated discussions, but all of that led to a consensus of what language do we use, and what does that language mean in the actual practice of learning, and then what do we do about it? So along the way, as they built that common language and proficiency table, we also go through a vetting experience where we take actual Kaneland student work, we give it to the educators that are job alikes and say, where would you rate this student work on our proficiency table to check for inter-rater reliability along the way? And if you say it's approaching, but I said it was proficiency, why do we have variance? Is it because we didn't select common language or don't have the same teacher clarity and we need to work that out and either revise the table, or I need to have a better understanding of what that looks like in practice? And those vetting experiences, although we didn't get to do tons of them last year, they really did uncover either some philosophical differences or language differences that we were able to remedy through conversation and work with the teachers. Thank you. The second part of that question, if I can segue to this, is, so as you progress monitor that learning through proficiency-based progress, you're going to have some students that need enhancement, need to go at a quicker pace, a different environment, and some that may need remediation or further support to assist them in getting to that level of proficiency. And that's really where the multi-tiered systems of support comes in. It's looking at our past response to intervention systems and adding that behavioral component piece to it as one package of how do we support students. In the past, we would look at the academic need of a student and academically try to figure out how to support, enhance, or remediate. But MTSS gives us the ability to look, you have to look at the whole child, their context, their family structure, social, emotional, academics, their learner profile. Are we asking them to acquire knowledge in an environment that might not be conducive to their style of learning? And how can we work with that process? Not to just say every student can choose how to learn, but at least the knowing of it can help us make some compromise and adjustments to our own environments for students. The multi-tiered systems of support is in the beginning phase, where we're really looking at foundational practices of how do we know our students, not just academically, but social emotionally, and how do we blend those two together to make decisions on progress within learning based on proficiency levels that we previously defined in the last commitment. And bringing that all together and then finding the right supports for all the students within their path of learning. And at times that could be something that occurs within the whole class because a trend shows us a whole class needs a different approach to something, or professional development for teachers in the approach that they are having. Or it can mean differentiated small groups, individualized practices, or even personalized where the student drives the conversation of how they may need further support. The MTSS system is different than our RTI system because it also includes a component where students can self-advocate. It doesn't just come from teacher recommendation that they need further support, but a student can come and advocate and say, I may look like I'm doing just fine, but here's what I need. And so it's a lot of working on building those practices, building those structures, and building that confidence so a staff member could identify a need or enhancement as well as the student themselves. You can see in our goals for this year specifically, it's a lot of working on the structures, the logistics, making sure that we develop professional development for our staff because we have done response to intervention now for almost 17 years. And so how do we take the constructs and philosophy of what we previously did and make sure we understand the differences with looking at the whole child and through the MTSS system. And so it's, since it's in the beginning phase, it's a lot of building kind of the constructs around the ideal that we would be implementing about a year from now. This is a chart that we have shared with staff multiple times, and we'll continue to share with them of how is MTSS different than RTI, and what are the structures and logistics and the rationale behind those differences so that we really can have clarity. One of the main things that we're hitting hard this fall, especially with the MTSS commitment team as well as steering committee, is making sure we call things the same thing and that common language, early childhood through 12th grade. Sometimes we're having conversations within a school, school to school or grade span to grade span, and we've just called things differently over the course of the years. And so it's getting us back on that same page with language, logistics, and philosophy as a huge part of the MTSS system. Questions about multi-tiered systems of support? So ideally, hopefully the connection is there. You lay out that proficiency level, you continually assess it through co-constructed feedback, and then when you realize there's an enhancement need or a remediation need, you work with your MTSS system to find that proper support environment, or sometimes it's a collaborative effort with the parent as well to support the child towards that proficiency expectation. All right, our last one is standards-based grading. We are in the beginning phase. Of course, I know you've heard a lot about standards-based grading and different pilots and practices. Elementary has been doing standards-based grading for about 13 years. And so it's not a new concept for Kaneland, but the implementation of consistency in the plan is why we are in the beginning phase. You can see that this really goes to the assessment of our knowledge and the reporting of it. Proficiency-based progress commitment talks about the learning path and the clarity of our expectations. Standards-based grading is the point in time when you assess it and report it out to the community, to the child, to other teachers. And so I think there's some, one of our key tasks for this year is to make a big clarity between proficiency-based progress and standards-based grading. And standards-based grading is the outcome of proficiency-based progress and conversations and co-construction of feedback. It's when we get to the point in time that we're reporting. Within this year, we need to, should flip to that next slide. Staff really need to start to hone in on some of the conversion practices, the consistency within the measures, the consistency within the levels of standards-based grading, early childhood through 12th grade. Of course, we know at every developmental level, there's a different way to report it and a manner to report it based on the developmental progression of the child, but to have the consistency in the philosophy, the levels that we use on the report cards and assessments, and then being able to understand the process of how does this convert at the high school level into a grade that needs to go onto a transcript. You'll see a lot of staff work to be done in this initial year of that consistency of implementation and making sure that we understand when a child has received this final assessment or reported grade on a reported standard, what is the next step and what does it mean for them as a learner? And so it's a lot of getting back on the same page, understanding our feedback processes, how we use that feedback to guide and report out formally and sometimes informally through a formative process, and then what is the next step when that summative reported standard occurs for the child. You will see again, it's in the beginning phase, but this chart at the very bottom I want to draw your attention to. This is the language that is early childhood through 12th grade that you will start to see in the coming years when we're at that full implementation of the consistent grade span, the 3, 2, 1, and the no evidence, and how we can have conversations with students based on the reported standard of why you're at a certain level. Pre-conversations of the expectation for learning and the feedback of what we're seeing in that learning environment happen through proficiency-based, but then when it's put onto an assessment grade or report card, you will see consistently the same language used as well as the same numeric system used through at least the 3 and down throughout all of the grade spans. We did kick off today with the feedback process and Personalized Learning 2.75 Academy, where again we talked a lot about feedback, the different types of feedback, the feedback process, how it's a co-construction, conversation, dialogue, discussion of observations. This is what I observed as the learning partner. What did you observe as the learner? And having conversations about, so how do we assess that? Students are a ginormous role in this and should be. Really being able to, a student should be able to self-assess their almost report card before given the report card. It should be no more of waiting till 3 p.m. when that email comes and we're guessing what's going to be on it. We should know what's going to be on it because the feedback process has solidly been in place. Questions about that?
I have a theoretical question.
Yeah.
Looking down the road, is the ideal with proficiency-based progress to not have grades?
Especially within the Personalized Learning Academy, absolutely. You know, we want to do personalized learning.
And
What?
the feedback and the give
Absolutely.
and take, and then
Yep.
acquire the proficiency and progress based on that.
Yes.
And you don't need a grade because you've already acquired the proficiency.
We want to have personalized learning practices both at the academy as well as, you know, embedded in all schools. And so that proficiency-based, you shouldn't need to wait as a child. If you have gained proficiency in a reported standard, you should know what reported standard to go on to next, or how that same reported standard may connect to a higher level reported standard that you may begin working on. And so that kind of alleviates, and we know we have some schedule constructs that don't work. You know, if you are within an Algebra 1 class, you can't do Algebra 2 completely in that class, but how can we start to blend some of those reported standards to make that progression happen and have a customized path for learning? That's the essence of what the Personalized Learning Academy will be built on, but those practices are also reflected and will be reflected within the school setting, all school settings as well.
Great, thank you.
We were super excited to redefine the word COVID. This wasn't a slide that was originally in it, but man, if there was any sunny side to the last year, it was really that COVID gave us an opportunity to change our vision of instruction daily. And for this plan to work, we need to continue that mindset of what are students doing, what are students showing us, what is the context and culture around us showing us, and how does it fit into the commitments that we have to make sure that all Kaneland Knights are ready for that graduate profile. We're beyond excited about these events right here, and this is the challenge to all of our millions watching at home, because I'm sure that's how many there are. Throughout the school year, you will see family events where you can come in, you can talk about the Kaneland Connects, talk about the commitments, answer a trivia question, because I know you watched the videos in this presentation or heard Mr. Raleigh and I speak, and you will know those answers. You could win a cool graduate profile sweatshirt, a cool basketball, football. There's going to be tons of great stuff throughout the year, especially starting at the homecoming parade and homecoming booth. Anytime you see that flag that's in the picture, you know that we're here to talk about the strategic plan. And so we're hoping that families will really connect and commit to each other around this plan and be one united Kaneland for sure. We do have over at the Professional Development Center a lot of games. We're just gamification people, I think. Staff can come in and press their luck every time they visit us, answer a question on Kaneland Connects. If community members want to come over to Meredith and try their luck at it as well, they could win some cool prizes. We are starting a personalized learning vlog series. We have learned throughout COVID that staff and community watch videos more than read as much like a blog. And so we are video logging and vlogging. You'll see our personalized learning coordinator, Laura Garland, will be putting out a vlog that hopefully Dr. Layden will share in his Friday update. We have monthly TED Talks. I'm sure you've watched TED Talks before, but we have our very own TED Talks here at Kaneland that will dive deeper into the 5 commitments, the graduate profile, and give progressive updates of what is it that we've learned within this month around that commitment. And so please tune into the TED Talks as well. And then we continue to have our blog from Ed Services to our staff with Kaneland Connects Trivia. We put our first one out today, first contract day for staff, and we have 52 already that have correctly identified the answer to our first quiz, and so our staff is really off to a great start with Kaneland Connects. Our next steps, August 15th, riveting TED Talks will be out, so be on the lookout for that. We do have commitment teams for every commitment. They meet anywhere from 1 to 3 times throughout the year. Our first one, Proficiency-Based Progress, is coming up this month on August 31st. I know we had a couple board members that already agreed to be on a commitment team, so thank you very much. We'll be sending out emails to our different teams as the dates approach. If others would like to join, please contact Patrick and I, or if any community members would like to join a commitment team, we always would love the community member voice as well. Mr. Rowley and I were just discussing of how to get the student voice in and having them part of commitment teams, or at least focused conversations right before the commitment team meetings, so we can hear from the students about the progress as well. You will see the community videos coming out through the vlog and different things. Our standards-based grading commitment team is coming up in September, and then I can't tell you enough how exciting our float is going to be for the homecoming parade. I don't want to reveal the theme because I don't want to get ahead of myself, but we started planning it today, and it's pretty amazing. So make sure you come out and see the float and then our booth at the homecoming game on that Friday. And I think that's it. Questions about this amazing plan that I could not agree with Patrick more? Pretty much beats everything that I have ever worked with. And any district, I would love to compare ours to theirs, because it's pretty darn exciting. Can you feel our passion? Thank you. Hey, guys.
It is very exciting to talk about different things and to get back on track. I feel like there is some excitement in the air, so thank you very much. I don't know if board members have questions.
I don't have a question, but I have a comment, and I just want to commend the team. I think this is an amazing plan. I felt your passion, and I, echo President Witt's comment. I think we've had a really tough few runs here. This has been an awesome way to get, right back into it and do some really great work. And it's perfect timing as we're starting school. So what a good way to start the school year off. So thank you for all your hard work.
Thank you. And if you would like any yard signs that have the QR code that links to the whole Kaneland Connects, we still have 10 available. First come, first serve.
The lawyers
Just
will put
email
one.
me. All right.
Or we might show up in the middle of the night and just put them in your front.
Hey, go
We
ahead.
might. That's how excited we are.
Can we get a sample of this Todd Talk thing, like a 60-minute snippet?
I don't want to ruin a preview.
Can't tell you in advance. You'll have to wait till on the 15th like everybody else.
Set your alarms like midnight, 12:01 on the 15th. Be ready.
Thank you, Patrick and Sarah. Thank you. In addition to Patrick and Sarah, thanking them, the cabinet team has this as a standing agenda item every week when we meet to discuss it. And then also when we meet monthly with that team, we have a standing agenda item to review it there also. So we are extremely excited, as you heard, and it was conveyed, that we finally get to get started on it, get working with it. It will be great. And again, if any other board members do find the time to be able to serve on one of the 5 commitment teams, let me know and we can plug you into any of those or one of those at any time. So thank you.
So I guess we will move on now to J3, which is the discussion and approval of a half-time kindergarten teacher at Kaneland, John Shields.
Yep, Dr. Atkins, as we monitor the numbers throughout the summer, we have an update and a request for our board for action tonight.
Absolutely, thank you. So as you know, I think probably most years we end up having this conversation at this point in the summer. We do have an increase in the number of kindergarten enrollees at Kaneland John Shields. We've gone from, 66 students back when we did our minimum staffing plan to 73 students at the kindergarten level, which means that we would be well over our recommended level at the 66 and the 73. We reached that tipping point where we'd like to add another half-day section. The majority of those moving kids were at the half-day level, so this allows us to have a PM section, which would reduce all of our classes down to an acceptable level so that we can accept more enrollees as we get more students. And as you know, we typically get another few students throughout the fall as families move into the area. So rather than be maxed at capacity and no room for students, this extra section gets us back to where we want to be with our class sizes while still allowing for more students. I did include in the memo the class size, kindergarten class sizes at other sites, just so you can kind of see that comparative norm. And so we're asking the board tonight for that additional 0.5 kindergarten teacher.
Questions? If If there are none, I'll entertain a motion that the administration shouldn't be on there, that the BOE approve an additional half-time kindergarten teacher at Kaneland John Shields Elementary School for the 21-22 school year. Is there a second?
Second.
And a roll call, please.
Mr. Mankivsky.
Aye.
Mrs. Simmons.
Aye.
Mrs. Witt.
Aye.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Aye.
Mrs. Junk.
Aye.
And Dr. Lawler.
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you.
Okay, that was the last item of new business. Move on to the superintendent and board report.
Yes, thank you. We are, as I mentioned earlier with the salutes, we are excited to welcome our students back to full in-person learning on Wednesday, which is the first time in 18 months and well over 500 days. So we're excited to have all of our students back. At the next board meeting on the 30th, we will provide updates on opening day, how it went, and all of the excitement. Please also know that please check the KCN regularly when that email comes out, because over the next couple days we take pictures of all of our students coming back and the excitement as they transition off the bus and into school, into their classrooms. And so we'll have more information coming on that. Also, one note, the Elburn Lions Club regularly works with us every year at Elburn Days. And on the Saturday, it's either the Friday or the Saturday. This year it happens to be on the Saturday. We generally have a 2 or 3 hour period of time in which our students with special needs and their families can attend Elburn Days before it's open to the public. It's been a great relationship. I think it's either the 4th or 5th year now that we've done that. Our families have really appreciated it. It's really helped our connection across the community. The Lions Club has been awesome in their donating of the time. The company that puts the rides on, they donate their time to the Lions Club. So it's just been a great relationship. Our families have appreciated it. And so that is on Saturday, the 21st. I believe it's the morning session from 9 till noon before it opens up to the general public. So, and I know I'd like to a special thank you to Mrs. Eggleston, our Director of Special Education. She does a lot of work networking with our families, connecting our families to that event and sharing that information. So it's ends up being a really nice day, and it's never rained on that day because it's meant to be for our students with special needs to have that opportunity with their families. Then the last piece that we do have the longer month with our meeting not being till August 30th. So by the time we do meet again, a couple of our committees will have met. So at the next meeting, we'll provide updates on a couple of those meetings. And if you have representation, I know Board Member Gonzalez and Board Member Mankivsky, if you have representation on those, we'll make sure we provide the information directly to you. And then all the other board members, you're welcome to come to other committees, and we'll make sure we have that information available to you. Those are my updates.
Okay. Dr. Fuchs, none? No. Okay, topics for future agendas. Anyone? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on. This is the second opportunity for public comment. Are there any public comments? Anyone? No. Okay. It's the first time that's happened in a while. We do have a closed session tonight. Meeting in accordance with Illinois Open Meetings Act, Section 122C1. And we need a motion to go into closed session.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
And a roll call, please.
Dr. Lawler.
Aye.
Mr. Mankivsky.
Aye.
Mrs. Simmons.
Aye.
Mrs. Witt.
Aye.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Aye.
Mrs. Junk.
Aye.
And we do not anticipate any action after our closed session. So when we go into closed session, the video will terminate. All right.